Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this training on knowing your rights and what to do if the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE, or other federal agents that have been deemed by them, comes to your workplace. We are really grateful to have Mojda Oskuyan, Deputy Director at Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project, here with us today. We're also going to have a local housing provider that has had an experience with agents coming to their one of their sites, share that experience and what they've learned from it. So we are really grateful. We're going to be here together for the next 2 hours. I want to go over just a few little logistical stuff before we really kind of like introduce who we are and what's going on. But my name is Jody Rao. I use she, her pronouns. I am our outgoing senior programs manager. The entire coalition team is here with us today. Allison Eisinger is going to be grounding you in and introducing you to the coalition a little bit more if you're not super familiar with us and how to stay connected. We have Danielle Palmer-Friedman, our communications lead, on backup tech support and all things to make sure this is a smooth experience for you. Kevin Lee is our new senior programs manager. They are going to be responding to some of your little more logistical or technical questions that are coming in through the Q&A. And Hallie Willis, our community policy manager, is going to be really looking at your questions that are related to content coming through the Q&A and combining those all up, making sure we're not including anything that has really specifics related to a person or a case. We don't want to be sharing that out live. We are not in a position to offer up any legal advice, so we're not going to be including that, but kind of trying to roll up a lot of similarly themed questions so that we can try to get as many of your questions answered today as possible. We are going to be turning off the chat here in just a little bit. We've got, I think at this point, 167 folks with us today, and I just don't know that we have the ability to manage that in a way that is going to be helpful. So we are going to be disabling that, but you can still put comments and questions into the Q&A for panelists and hosts, and we will do our best to respond to those and get those into the recording and asked and answered. I want to have a huge shout out to our partners at the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. They are co-sponsoring this training with us today. They worked really hard and diligently to try to get American Sign Language interpretation here today, and unfortunately we were not able to secure the needed interpreters. So my apologies that we don't have that. We did try to make that happen. We are recording this. We will be doing a follow-up email to everyone that registered for this training. We will send out a follow-up email. We'll have a short blog write-up. It'll be posted on our YouTube. If one of my colleagues can throw our link to our YouTube channel into the chat right now, I would appreciate that. We have a wealth of information. And then Danielle, we can see the Google Doc on your shared screen right now. Beautiful, we're back. Thank you. And thank you for dropping that link in there. We have a wealth of information on our YouTube channel. All of our monthly general membership meetings, which is on the third Thursday from 9 to 10:30 a.m. are on there. That is a huge wealth of information around professional development, resources, skill sharing, advocacy, what's happening in the policy world. We invite folks in to do that and share information with us there. We do trainings on a regular basis, a lot around public benefits at the state, and then we also do some federal benefits as well. Those trainings are all up there, so we invite you to explore that. Thank you, Hallie. Closed captioning is available. You just want to select down on the bottom of your Zoom window the more icon with the 3 dots, and then select closed captioning, and that should enable closed captioning for you, if that is helpful. Let's go ahead and review the agenda today and talk about what we're going to be sharing today. So we're doing our welcome. We're going to do a little introduction. We're going to then hand it over to Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project, and they've got an incredible presentation. They've got a lot of resources. We're going to have time for question and answer. We're going to then hand it over to our local partner here that has had a recent example of agents coming to their site and what that was like for them and what they've learned, just as an example. And then we'll kind of close out right around 11 o'clock. As Allison mentioned, we are going to be taking collective action today. We are an advocacy organization and we are stronger together. And so we're going to practice what that looks like to show up in force today here with all of you. I think I want to just put a little framing around this training today and the conversation that we're going to be having. We don't want to depersonalize what is happening, right? It's really easy to use the acronym ICE and to think about this happening somewhere else. But I saw somewhere in the chat that ICE was at somebody's property that they work at just yesterday. We know it's happening. We know people with both legal and undocumented status are being picked up right now, right? We do not want to depersonalize this. This is happening to people that we work with that are in our communities. And we're talking about this at a federal level. So on that note, I'm going to have us disable the chat at this point. You still have access to the Q&A, and please put those questions as they come up for you. We are paying attention. We are gathering them all up. And on that note, I'm going to pass it off to Allison Eisinger. Thanks all.
Thank you, Jody. Good morning and welcome. My name is Allison Eisinger. I'm the Executive Director of the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. And I want to welcome you all warmly here today by acknowledging my own family's immigrant and refugee history, including my father, who was an unaccompanied youth without correct documentation, whose life was saved by people who took action in the run-up to World War II. And I think probably every single person who's joined us today for this session either has a family history that they know that relates them to an emergency departure from a homeland, a kidnapping, or another crisis moment. And if you don't, then it is perhaps because you don't have the good fortune to know your family history, but you know the history of your friends, your neighbors, and your countries of origin and this country. And we are hosting this training very much aware of the extreme circumstances that the United States of America is putting people through in this moment in history. So I want to extend just deep appreciation to the folks at the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. Moshe, thank you so much for joining us. We know that your organization is at the forefront of standing up, speaking out, training all of us, and helping to push back against those who would repeat horrible parts of global history. We are going to talk a little bit more about why it is that the Coalition on Homelessness is bringing folks together for this purpose and for many other purposes in this moment. And I can think of no better way to ground ourselves into that than sharing with you the mission, vision, and values of our coalition. I'm going to invite Kevin Lee, who is the newest member of our team. This is his first full week on our staff, to join us. We do this at the beginning of all of our general membership meetings, and we thought we would do this here today. So I will invite Kevin to unmute and share the mission, vision, and values. And then I'll come back briefly before we hand things to Moshe.
Hi, Allison. Thank you. I'm assuming I'm off mute now. Very happy to read our mission and vision statement. For our mission, we mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. Our vision is a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone has a home.
Thank you, Kevin. The values that this coalition members and, whoops, it looks to me like I might be on mute. Nope, okay, good. So much for Zoom's little logos. The values of our coalition, which we selected just over 5 years ago, are equity, justice, and collective action. Let's recognize that right now in our lifetimes in this country, equity, justice, and indeed the very notion of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people are under attack. And that is why we are clear collective action is essential. The information that you're going to be receiving through this workshop today is important for individuals, for yourself, your family, friends, and community, as well as for the people on whose behalf and with whom you are working in whatever your workplace setting is. Most of the folks here today are coming from homeless services, housing, or other human services, but I know we have people here from educational and healthcare settings and other community settings. You are all, of course, welcome. And sadly, we are all collectively responsible to do everything we can to keep as many people safe as we can. Because we are a coalition, we are committed to making sure that any training or meeting that we host is not a one-off. So we warmly invite you to find connection here. Although, as Jody said, we're up to 200 people right now, we made the decision that we needed to disable the chat. Not an easy decision for us, but we invite you to stay connected with the coalition. We have many free trainings that are open to the public. We have advocacy workshops. We educate each other and ourselves on an ongoing basis. So you may have a training you'd like to bring to us. And we have an email list, and collectively there are over 12,000 people on our email list. So you can start to see and feel you are not alone. You are not isolated, no matter what your workplace decisions and policies are, no matter what kind of community you are living in. We welcome you to be part of this coalition and to be part of the millions and millions of people in this country and elsewhere who are stepping up to protect as best we can, to speak out, to push back, and to change course. We have a philosophy of organizing. That is what allows us to take part in collective action. So there are a number of ways that you can get involved. We want to move to the content of today, but I just want to say if you are curious about anything, please feel welcome to reach out to Danielle at homelessinfo.org or just use contact@homelessinfo.org. As folks were joining, I came off mute to just let everyone know that we are taking the lead of an extraordinary national coalition that has been fighting to protect immigrant families and individuals for years, and that is the Protecting Immigrant Families Coalition. They are a national organization made up of many, many groups that do a variety of immigrant rights, legal advocacy, human services, and social services work. And we want to particularly highlight something that they are working on, which is an attempt to lift the bar on lawful immigrants whose access to federal benefits, including healthcare, nutrition, housing, and other programs, is limited, despite the fact that people of many immigration statuses pay federal taxes and usually local taxes as well, and contribute to our national economy and our community's well-being in many, many ways. The reason for this bar is that in 1996, when Congress passed restrictive welfare and immigration legislation, they created unnecessary barriers, and they created this arbitrary 5-year waiting period, sometimes called the 5-year bar. And Congress could lift this bar and fix this injustice. Now, I know what you're thinking. Congress isn't doing a whole lot that is productive and useful right now. That does not give us permission to be silent. In fact, it requires us to speak up. One of the challenges that we face together is that we cannot fall silent, we cannot self-censor, and we cannot stop pointing out how abnormal, illegal, cruel, unconstitutional, and bad the policies that are being proposed are. So the Lift the Bar Act, which we are inviting you to take action on today, will restore access to public programs like Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP, and to food benefits through SNAP. We know these resources are under attack. We understand that. They are essential, and you understand that. So we're inviting you to take action if you can. I'm putting the link to take action in the chat, but we will also send it as part of our follow-up message to all of you. And I invite you to consider whether or not your organization wants to become a signed-on member of the Protecting Immigrant Families Coalition, so that collectively we add. They sent letters to Congress just a couple of weeks ago with 750 organizations signed on. There should be thousands, and there will be, if we all continue to do what we can to spread that word. We have to make sure that anti-immigrant politicians and anti-immigrant policies do not win the day. And sadly, we know that in the near term, some of those politicians and some of those policies will. But we are not going to allow that to stand. So with that, I will just once again invite you to use the QR code or go to www.homelessinfo.org, where you probably registered for this workshop. Stay connected with us. Let us know what's going on for you in your workplace, in your service site, and how we can continue to support you. Mojda, thank you so much for being here. I am gratefully turning things over to you.
Thank you, Allison. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mojda. I am one of NWIRP's co-deputy directors. Allison, I want to thank you for the uplifting and inspiring opening. God knows we all need that these days. So I am very grateful. And I also want to thank every single one of you who joined us today, and to also thank you for all the work that you all do on behalf of everyone, but especially our immigrant community in the Northwest. So for today, okay, thank you. I was not seeing the slides and I was sort of panicking a little bit. All right, so one thing before we start on the slides, I just wanted to mention, and I am so sorry about this, but it seems like my internet is glitchy, and it goes off and on. This just happened, so I really do apologize if, all of a sudden I freeze in the middle of something. But do let me know if it becomes a huge problem, and I will call in our IT. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Know your rights and policy updates, Thank you. Next slide. Before we do that, a little bit about Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. NWIRP is the only statewide organization that provides comprehensive immigration legal services to the low-income individuals in Washington state. So we provide all types of services. What we are concentrating on these days are representing people in removal proceedings for very obvious reasons. But we also do family services, citizenship. We assist the youth in their application for legal status. And we represent survivors of DV and victims of other crimes as well. NWIRP's focus, our bread and butter, is our direct legal services. And by direct legal services, we mean we provide services to an individual from the beginning to the end. So we take the case on and we work through the whole process, right? However, because the need for our services are so great and our resources are limited, there are times that we try to limit in order for us to assist as many individuals as possible, right? We try to provide limited services in order to make sure our community members remain safe and their applications do get processed. We also engage in impact litigation. We sue the government, basically. We sue the government when they violate our community members' constitutional rights. Sometimes we sue the government on behalf of a specific individual, and sometimes we sue the government on behalf of a class of community members, right, whose rights have been violated. Of course, we do systematic advocacy by going to the legislator and letting them know about all the issues. Many of them Allison mentioned. And then we do community education, which I realize there is a lot of need for these days. So we are trying to do our best to do as many as possible, although it is difficult because we are also trying to concentrate on assisting as many individual community members in their cases. Thank you, Danielle. All right, NWIRP has 4 offices. We have an office in Seattle, and that's the phone number and email address. Our Tacoma office started actually when the Northwest Detention Center opened up. And we opened it just to respond to all the individuals that the government was detaining in Tacoma. If you haven't gone to the area around the detention center, you should go. It's really depressing. Just so you know, prior to January 20th, I think the detention center was holding about 600 to 800 individuals. And I believe now they're at capacity between 1,500 and 1,600. So they doubled. And then we have 2 offices in Eastern Washington. We have an office in Granger that serves the Yakima Valley and the surrounding areas, and another office in Wenatchee. All right, what are we going to talk about today? So, first thing, we are going to talk about which agencies are we talking about, right? So who is doing the enforcement actions and who is at the risk of deportation? Then we are going to discuss Know Your Rights. In that context, we are actually going to walk through how can agencies prepare themselves and have protocols in place. Here, I also want to mention now, I think, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, the National Homelessness Law Center is such an awesome resource. I'm sure you all know about it, but if not, do please go to their website. You will learn a lot. I took a lot of stuff from their website for this presentation. So please make sure that you are familiar with National Homelessness Law Center. I have put their information in our resources slide as well. Then we are going to provide you with the latest updates, all depressing. But one thing that you should know that it is really inspiring is that at least as of now, there are multiple litigations. So these policies are not going unchallenged. Then we are going to talk about Washington state specific protections and then safety planning. And this safety planning is specific toward the immigrant community members, right? Especially the ones with family and children. And then do the Q&A. Thank you. All right. So the presentation parameters, I think Jody mentioned that we are not providing individualized legal advice today, right? For very obvious reasons, we don't want people to share their the facts of their case in public. So please don't do that. Please don't expose yourself. And I will not be able to provide any specific advice about a specific case during this presentation. If you do have questions about your case, please do contact one of our offices or an immigration attorney, but please don't divulge any specific case information during this call. And of course, the information is changing so rapidly, the updates are coming so rapidly that I cannot promise you that the presentation that we are giving today is going to be the latest update even today, right? We could hang up this phone, hang up this call, and something else has happened. So please make sure that you stay updated and aware by joining our mailing list, of course, or our website. You can always go to our website. And you can also go to Immigration Policy Tracking Project. They do track all the policy updates. So you will know exactly what's happening when it's happening. Thank you. All right. So the meat and bread of things. So what agencies are we talking about here? So all these agencies are under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security, right? The department is huge. It has hundreds of agencies under it. But the two that we are most concerned about are the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. We constantly hear about ICE, right? And HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, that we don't necessarily hear so much about, but I will explain why. Let's talk about ICE first. So ICE is actually a huge agency in itself, right? It does have sub-agencies that concentrate on specific group of community members, right? So we have ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations, that manages all aspects of enforcement, from identifying the person that they believe is here without papers, without documents, to arresting them, to detaining them, and to ultimately removing them. So that's ERO. And then we have the Criminal Alien Program. I'm just going to say this right now. I hate that word alien. I mean, for one thing, I keep thinking of, aliens from Mars. And for another thing, it's dehumanizing. Oh my God, I cannot say the word. Anyway, you know what I mean. And it is just so disrespectful. But it is the name of the program, so I'm going to say it is Criminal Aliens, CAP. CAP assists the enforcement and removal operations and focuses on community members who have come in contact with state or local or federal, actually, law enforcement because of some alleged or actual criminal arrest and or conviction. I think you all have heard that the administration has also deputized other agencies such as DEA, US Marshals, IRS investigative agents, although I don't know if anybody is working at IRS anymore, so I'm actually not sure if they have agents that can investigate, but anyway, they have also been deputized. And ATF, for some odd reason. They have been deputized, but I am not absolutely certain. Well, actually, I don't think that I have heard of these agencies actually engaging in large-scale assistance yet. So the administration also is encouraging state and local law enforcement to enter into agreements with ICE. These are the 287G agreements, where state and local law enforcement cooperate, but under Keep Washington Working, that should not be the case in Washington State. In Washington State, state and local law enforcement should not be assisting ICE. And if that is not the case, and you hear otherwise, please let us know. And then we are talking about HSI. HSI investigates violations in employment law and investigates transnational criminal organizations. Generally, when we are talking about I-9 audits, we are talking about HSI. Thank you. All right, so those were the agencies generally, right, that we are talking about. Let's talk about who is at the risk of deportation. So the law permits the federal government to deport certain community members. One group of people are people who are undocumented. So people could be undocumented either because they entered the United States by crossing the border and have been living here, or people who came through with a visa, but then somehow either overstayed their visa or engaged in conduct that violated the terms of that visa. So now they're undocumented. And then government can also deport people with legal status who have committed certain criminal acts. Now, people who are especially in danger right now are people who either have a previous order of removal or have had recent interactions with law enforcement. Now, remember how we talked about Keep Washington Working and that, local and state law enforcement should not be cooperating with ICE. ICE can figure out if a person has had interactions with the criminal system just by looking at the dockets without any cooperation with state or local law enforcement, right? Dockets are public, which is why this group of people is also at the heightened risk of arrest. Now, just because the government can deport certain group of people doesn't mean that the government gets to actually deport everyone. Most people actually do have a right. I know and I'm saying this, and what goes on in my head is all the violations of law that is currently being committed by the administration, where people's due process rights are violated left and right. But having said that, people do have the right to actually go before an immigration judge and fight their case. So lawful permanent residents, people who have green cards, definitely have that right to go before an immigration judge and fight their case. There are other temporary protective statuses that can also prevent removal and deportation, such as temporary protected status, people who have deferred action for labor enforcement, people who are currently in DACA status, deferred action for childhood arrivals. So these statuses, although temporary, can and should prevent somebody from getting deported, right? Now, there are exceptions to the right to fight your case before an immigration court. People who have existing removal orders can be deported immediately. That previous removal order can be reinstated. People who came to the United States through the visa waiver entry, it means that the person did not need to get a United States visa in order to enter, for example, Canadians, right? And they can generally come to the United States for 90 days. But because of that privilege, they don't get to fight their case before an immigration judge if they're arrested by ICE. And people who are subject to expedited removal, and we will talk about expedited removal in a bit. Before we move on from this slide, the only thing that I want to mention is that although the groups of people that I just mentioned do not necessarily have the right to appear before an immigration judge, if they are afraid of returning to their home country, they can state so, and that should afford them some protection. All right, let's talk about know your rights. Okay, so we know that this administration hopes to instill fear in our communities. The administration wants to make life so miserable for our community members that they will just self-deport. I think this is partially why they rescinded the sensitive location memorandum that we will talk about in a bit. I mean, they want to disrupt community members' civil life, right? And how they feel protected, how they feel part of the community. They want to separate the immigrant community members from the rest of the community. So we combat this fear-mongering tactic by making sure that our immigrant communities actually know their rights. We believe that this empowers them to fight for themselves, right? And it prevents arrests. And we know that this is working because this is, I don't know, I think by now it's 3 weeks to a month ago, the head of ICE, I think Tom Homan or something, was on Fox News saying, hey, listen, people are listening to all these Know Your Rights presentations, and it is getting much more difficult for us to make arrests. And I'm going, yes. And so it's working. And then, you know, if and when they do violate it, we can't hold the government accountable for violation of these rights. Thank you. All right, so what rights are we talking about? The first thing to know is that every single person in the United States, regardless of their immigration status, has certain rights, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a US citizen or you're undocumented. Every single person has certain rights. Here, we are talking about two rights. An individual's Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures and expectation of privacy, and an individual's Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, ask for an attorney, and not to provide information that would incriminate themselves. Now, what if ICE violates these laws? You know, we can go to court and say, hey, listen, ICE is not allowed to violate these laws, and the federal courts should stop them from engaging in such conduct. We can publicize the violations so other community members are aware of what's going on. And I mean, if an individual is in removal proceeding, we can ask the court to dismiss the case just because the reason the person was arrested was such a violation. All right, now, one thing to mention, especially about the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment rights. The Fourth Amendment rights, the strength of it is dependent on the location, right? So the Fourth Amendment rights to privacy is strongest where there is an expectation of privacy, such as your home, and weaker when you're in public. But your Fifth Amendment right carries with you everywhere. So a person always has a right to remain silent. And we ask and beg that people actually exercise this right, the right to remain silent. There are lots of times when ICE agents actually say that they have reasonable suspicion to arrest someone of someone's status, right? Because the person talked and provided them with that information. But if the person remains silent, then ICE will not have the information necessary to arrest. So, and as I said, the Fifth Amendment right carries with you everywhere, in privacy of your house, in public, at work, at your doctor's appointment, everywhere, right? And people should exercise it. Now, let's talk about the Fourth Amendment right to privacy. As we said, it is strongest where there is an expectation of privacy. Your home, right? So for ICE to be allowed to enter the house, they should either have a judicial warrant or the person's consent. Now, before we move on, let's talk about warrants just for 1 second. You see the two samples that we included in this presentation. The sample on the left where it says United States District Court, that's a judicial warrant. The one on the right where it says warrant for an arrest of the alien by Department of Homeland Security, that's an administrative warrant. ICE cannot enter your house with an administrative warrant. So don't open the door. They can enter the house if they have a properly executed judicial warrant, right? And by properly executed, I mean that it is actually a warrant by a court, signed by a judge, names the person or persons to be arrested, and has a date. If it's not that, then the warrant is not valid, right? So, just to recap, ICE can only enter your house if they have a judicial warrant or your consent. Chances of ICE having a judicial warrant for a civil arrest, a criminal arrest is different. For a civil immigration arrest is very low. And if they have it, whether or not you open the door, doesn't matter. They're going to break down the door. So our suggestion really is, don't open the door. Ask the agent to show you the warrant. Ask them to slide it under the door. If they cannot slide it under the door, ask them to hold it up, and you can take a picture by the window. Somehow ask them to leave it. If there are no options, ask them to leave it by the door and leave so you can have a look at it, right? Whatever you do, do not open the door. And then ask to see the officer's badge. So as I noted, generally speaking, ICE does not have a judicial warrant for a civil immigration arrest. So as a practical matter, our advice is don't open the door. Definitely do not open the door if ICE only has an administrative warrant. Thank you. All right, in the car. So agents, ICE or CBP agents, can pull people over if they have an administrative warrant or they have a reasonable suspicion. They can ask for a person's driver license. So first, what we want community members to do is, if a person is stopped, to ask, hey, listen, who are you and why are you stopping me? Is it local police, highway patrol? Is it ICE or CBP? Remember that in Washington state, keep Washington working means that state or local law enforcement agencies cannot be cooperating with ICE. If they do, we want to know. And then ask why you have been stopped. And if there is an administrative warrant, agents actually can arrest the person. You know, I mean, our experience has been that if it comes to making a stop, they generally have some information about who they're after and whether or not that person is in the car, although God knows they make mistakes all the time. Again, if there is no warrant, ask if you're free to go. If they do arrest you, please remain calm and stop talking and just say that you want to speak to an attorney and you want to exercise your Fifth Amendment right. Remember that even though agents, ICE and CBP agents, can stop the car and ask for your license and can arrest you if they either have an administrative warrant or a reasonable suspicion, they cannot search the car without a judicial warrant. So for that, they need a judicial warrant and they cannot do it. And the community member should say, I don't want you to search my car. Next slide, please. All right. In public, a reminder that we can always exercise our Fifth Amendment right and remain silent, refuse to answer any questions about the person, about one's criminal background or immigration history. Do ask why were you stopped and if there is a warrant. If not, just let them know that you refuse to speak with them. You don't allow a search, although, just a pat down is allowed, and that's for the safety of the officers, blah, 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 blah. But they cannot search besides a pat down. And let the officers know that you want to leave. This is another thing that we always want community members to exercise the right to say, listen, am I under arrest? If I'm under arrest, why? And I'm not going to say anything else. If not, I want to leave. Can I leave? I want to leave. Now, if there is an administrative order for the person's arrest, the agents can arrest. It is very important for the community member to remain calm and not answer any questions. It is also, of course, very important that the community member does not run, does not resist arrest, because that's another charge, right? And then definitely does not lie or provide fake documents. Thank you. Actually, about the not running and not hiding and not giving fake documents. Thank you, Danielle. I was giving this presentation a while ago to a group of union members, and one of them was saying, hey, listen, so what if we all started to run? So there will be a confusion about like what's happening and who is who. I'm going, well, good for you, but you should know that you all can be arrested for obstruction of justice then. So if you're willing to take that risk. But yeah, generally we are asking people, please do not resist arrest, please don't run, don't lie, and don't provide fake documents. Thank you. All right, now, we talked about home, car, and public. And next we are going to talk about places that are sort of in between, right? Places that the sensitive location memo covered, actually. Now, but before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about rescission of the sensitive location memo. So it was rescinded on January 20th, naturally. The memorandum prior to being rescinded protected schools, hospital, houses of worship, medical facilities, courts, and other sensitive areas like shelters. And of course, these areas are to be protected because they provide for public safety, they provide for the entire community's well-being, and they provide essential services, right? This is why we had the sensitive location memo. So it has now been rescinded. There is an updated memo that says ICE agents can use common sense in enforcement actions. What this memo really is concentrating on are people who are what ICE agents say amendable to expedited removal, to immediately being removed from the United States. So that is one group of people that they're after. The other group of people that they're after are people who have had some interaction with the criminal justice system. That's the emphasis, and that's what they're going to be going for when they, well, mostly, I mean, they can go for everybody, when they enter sensitive areas. All right, so now that we talked about the rescission of the sensitive location, let's talk about what this means in actuality, right? So, you know, school, houses of worship, hospitals, and courthouses have, well, courthouses not so much, have public areas and private areas. So, for example, when we are talking about schools, the buildings where the classrooms are in are private areas because not everybody can enter without permission. But the parking lots and areas around the buildings where the school is located are public areas. So because everybody can enter, ICE can also enter. Now, Washington Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction has a very detailed memorandum that we have linked here that provides for all kinds of protections for students. I suggest that you all review it and also please forward it to all the concerned community members. Houses of worship are the same, right? So where congregants gather is public because everybody can come, but then a church's office or other areas that the church deems private are not public, and so ICE cannot enter because not everybody can enter. Hospital and medical facilities are the same. Remember, with hospitals and medical facilities, there is also the right to privacy for a patient that a doctor or a medical facility must exercise. And the Washington state courthouses also have a very specific protection for the immigrant community members that ICE is not allowed to come and make civil arrests in or near a courthouse because they want people to show up, right? I mean, you could be going to court because you need to take care of a parking ticket, or you're in the middle of some family proceedings where you need to go to court, or it's a criminal person. But I mean, the court system, Washington state court system, wants people to actually go to their hearings, which is why they provide these protections. The memo is linked here, and I also suggest that you review and share widely. All right, so large scale raids. So up until very recently, we were saying that, you know, ICE has not engaged in large scale raids in Washington state. That changed on April 2nd. So we now have had a worksite raid in Washington state. I am guessing that we may have more Thing about race is that, ICE agents will likely have warrants for arrest of some people that they're after at that particular work site. What happens is that they can gather a lot of people, especially if the area is a public area, right? And then gather and put under like short administrative arrest, and then they start talking to these people, right? About, what is your name? What is your blah, blah, what is your immigration status? And community members start talking. And that is how they get arrested. So even in a worksite rate as scary as that is, it is very important for our community members to exercise their Fifth Amendment right to silence and not say anything. Thank you. All right, so this is specific to agencies who wish to have protocols in place, right? For to better protect the immigrant community members, both who are working or who may need their assistance of the agency. So we have divided this to 3 sections. The first section is what to do before, and then what to do during, and then what to do after, right? So let's talk about before first. So prior to any interaction with ICE, 3 important steps need to be taken. One is with the type of information that is being collected, developing protocols, and training staff. So what did we mean by information that needs to be collected or needs not be collected, actually? I think is the right way to put this. Agencies should try to really limit gathering any information related to the immigration status of the person. If an agency has to collect the information, it would be great if the information was collected in the aggregate, so no specific individual was identified. If the agency is subject to homeless management information system requirements about collecting data, please make sure that you only collect that data and nothing more. And then be sure that individuals who come to ask for your assistance know that they do not need to provide Social Security numbers in order to obtain services. This is really important because we don't want people to either, provide fake or fraudulent Social Security numbers just to get services, right? And anyway, if the agency does not need a Social Security number, then it's okay to not have it. And then, of course, be sure that participants know the agency's privacy policies and when their information may be shared with an outside agency. And then developing protocols, I know you all have heard about this now. Which areas are public, which areas are private, demarcate, make sure that it's very, very clear what we are talking about. And you should try to make as much of your area private as possible, right? Now, I realize that this may confuse the community members who come to your agency seeking help, but maybe you can have a communication about why these measures are being put in place, and it's just to protect them. And if the facility is open, then demarcate private areas, offices, sleeping quarters, so forth and so on. Training staff, especially the front desk reception staff, the people who first come in contact with any agents that may walk through the door, right? That is also extremely important. So the first thing is that the staff should know that under no circumstances should they consent to agents entering the facility. Staff should be trained to say, hey, listen, yeah, I know you're here. I respect you. I respect that you have a job to do, but I need to actually inform my supervisor and see what directions I get. Staff should not be answering any questions. They should again let the agents know that, hey, listen, you just have to wait for the supervisor. I'm not going to say anything. Remember that again, everybody can exercise their Fifth Amendment rights at all time. Staff should never lie, though. That is very important. For example, if there is an individual that the agents are asking for in the facility at the time, and the agents are asking whether or not that individual in the facility, the staff should not lie and say they're not here, but they could remain silent and not say anything. Thank you. Okay, so then what happens during the raid? Never ever physically interfere with the officers. That just, creates more tension and may make things a lot more difficult physically for everybody. But do request to see the warrant or the subpoena. Now, here, it's very important that the staff who are going to be the first point of contact with the agents to know the difference between a judicial and an administrative subpoena and how to distinguish between the two. The staff should also know that they can and should ask for name and badge number of the officers. And then, the staff can say, wait here, I need to make a copy and speak to my supervisor. Do not let the agents to come in. One trick that we have seen, both in the context of individuals who agents are going to their house or, agencies, is that ICE agents can just say, hey, listen, we just need your help. We are investigating. They're wearing a police uniform, right? It doesn't say ICE. They could just be wearing no uniform, or they could be like, fully geared, as you have seen on TV. And they could just say, hey, listen, we are just seeking your help. We are investigating a crime and we are looking for this person, without clarifying which agency they're from, right? So it's very important for staff to know which agency is actually communicating with them. Of course, staff should immediately notify the supervisor. So I mean, people do this differently, and hopefully John will come up and share, hopefully, his method. But I mean, one method that we have seen is that people create Google groups or Signal groups, right, with the specific staff members, right, frontline staff members who will have to deal with ICE agents at the beginning, and all the supervisors. Hello, John, and all the supervisors that will have to respond, right? So in case of an ICE raid, staff know to immediately just text that group of people and that somebody will respond immediately. If the agency has legal counsel, the supervisor should contact the legal counsel. Now, towards the end of the slide deck, we do have National Homelessness Law Center's contact information, and they do suggest that if you do not have legal counsel, to please communicate with them. As always, state that the agents are not allowed in the non-public areas without a judicial warrant. If they have a judicial warrant, they can enter the private areas, but it's limited to the scope of the warrant. And then do not ask any questions, and let the officers know that you want to remain silent. Do not provide any information to the agents, and do not try to hide anyone within your agency, right? I mean, all that we are trying to say here is don't interfere with the agents, whatever they're doing. And then, if possible, record the interaction with your phone. You should let the agents know that you are recording. It is your right to record, right? You have that right. But let the agent know that you're recording. Be at a safe distance, and do not interfere with whatever the agents are doing. And stop the recording if you feel like it's having an adverse effect on the person who is being detained, right? So if the agents all of a sudden become more aggressive or violent, stop recording, right? Because we want to keep a record, of course, that will be very valuable, but not at the cost of somebody suffering additional harm. So if you believe that is what is about to happen, stop recording. It's not worth it. And then if HSI ICE requests for information documentation, make sure they have a judicial warrant. If they do have a warrant, immediately inform the supervisor. And in case of a subpoena for an I-9 and so forth and so on, this supervisor should generally call the legal counsel and see if the subpoena is enforceable, if so, to what extent, and so forth and so on. And then post ICE raid, gather a list of everybody who was detained. Do ask the agents where they are detaining, where they are taking the detained folk, right? And this could be different depending who they are detaining. For example, most detainees go to the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, right? But if this is a family, that might not happen. They will take them to a local hotel. Nobody knows where. If this is a youth we are talking about, they will go to a different facility. So it would be very helpful to know which facility the person is being taken to. And then document, while it's fresh in your mind, document everything that happened. So what day was it? What time was it? How many agents came? What were they wearing? Were they fully clothed with 100 different types of guns? Or were they plain clothes? What were their names and their badge numbers? And whether or not the agents had judicial warrant, what happened during the action? Everything that you could remember, you have no idea how useful that can be to the person who was being detained, right? And to the community at large, if we can gather this information. And here I just wanted to let you know that NWIRP has an advisory for nonprofit organization and social service providers, and I have linked to it. Thank you. All right, latest updates. I see that I am using a lot of time, so we're going to do this a little bit more quickly. All right. So as I said in the beginning, the updates are just depressive, right? But what you should know is that all of them are being litigated. Yay. So the birthright citizenship, I mean, we knew that the administration was talking about this, but really, I mean, it's so unbelievable that they did this. But so birthright citizenship says a person who is against everything in the 14th Amendment, a person who is born in the United States to an undocumented parent cannot obtain, does not obtain U.S. citizenship at birth. Of course they do. So this one is being litigated. DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, announced in 2012. It has been litigated since 2012. But the program is still valid. People are still applying for DACA renewals, right? People are still renewing their DACA status. People can, outside of Texas, people can submit first-time applications, but those applications are not being adjudicated yet. This case is eventually going to go to the Supreme Court. Now, TPS, humanitarian parole, all kinds of parole programs, and all kinds of TPS, temporary protected status programs. The administration does want to get rid of as many of these programs as possible, but they do try to terminate programs, and every single time they do, they're being sued. So all these programs are currently under litigation. Notice to appear memorandum, we put this here just to note that, before it used to be that if you submitted an application to USCIS, the customer service arm of Department of Homeland Security, if that application was denied, one's case, would not necessarily be referred for removal proceeding. That has changed. They are now saying that if an application is denied, then the case will be referred to removal proceedings. So it's even more important for people to actually consult with an immigration attorney before submitting an affirmative application before USCIS. The last one is the ending taxpayer subsidization of open borders. This is big bunch of nothing, right? I mean, most undocumented folk already do not qualify to get federal benefits. This executive order came out just to scare people to apply for what they do qualify for. Thank you. All right. We did talk about the sensitive location, rescission of the sensitive location memorandum, expansion of expedited removal. Here it is what is happening. So under the previous administration, expedited removal was limited to individuals who had entered within 14 days, right? So who had been here for 14 days or less, and were within 100 miles of the border. The new administration changed that and said, no, not 14 days, 2 years. So anybody who has been here for less than 2 years and is within 100 miles of the border is now subject to expedited removal. Do remember that even people who are subject to expedited removal can and should express a fear of return to their home country and seek asylum if that is in fact the case. Thank you. All right, so this is the latest nightmare registration. Just so you all know, it is being litigated. But this, the administration has been threatening this for a little bit. Finally, the form came out. The form is G325R. The policy goes into effect on April 11, 2025. However, mindful is being litigated. There may be a temporary restraining order. So what is it? They want people to register because it's impossible for the administration to actually find and remove however many million people, right? So this is like having people actually introduce themselves. And if you take a look at the form, it is very invasive. It asks a whole bunch of questions, not just about the individual, but like the individual's extended family member. Everybody who is over 14 needs to register if the person plans to be here for 30 days or more. It really is meant to capture people who entered without inspection. What are the consequences of not registering? That you will be charged with a misdemeanor, may have to spend 6 months in jail or pay a fine of $1,000. If you do register, it could lead to removal proceedings. And then even if you register, you have to carry proof of registration, or there is a charge. And one thing is that lack of registration might have adverse effects on any future immigration applications. Thank you. As I said, this is an enforcement tool, and NWIRP's position right now is that once it is implemented, and remember, just because the administration says it's April 11th does not mean that it is April 11th. Hopefully there will be a TRO. Then we suggest that individuals should seek advice and counsel from reputable immigration attorneys before registering. Another reminder, another reminder, especially in this context, it is very important, is that all individuals have the right to remain silent and not to self-incriminate. Thank you. All right, harmful legislation, Laken-Riley Act. Okay, so the Laken-Riley Act is a horrible, horrible, horrible piece of legislation because it's a very racist piece of legislation. So under this piece of legislation, a person who has been just charged, not convicted, not even arrested, a person who can be just charged with any of these grounds, shoplifting, can you imagine? And they are subject to mandatory detention. So no bond, they have to stay in Tacoma for God knows how long, just because they have been charged. No conviction necessary. And then the bailout for sanctuary cities, this is going to get also litigated. This is just a scare tactic. So sanctuary cities will not protect our immigrant communities. Thank you. Okay, the Washington State specific, keep Washington working. So actually, it's good that we're talking about this now. Here's the thing. I just want to clarify that, yes, Washington State is a sanctuary city because we have this legislation, right? But I want to make sure that folk know that just because we have this legislation, it does not in any way at all prevent ICE agents or CBP agents to do any of their work, right? Enforcement actions. So as is very clear, they can come and they can arrest and remove and detain people, right? The only thing that it says that keep Washington working means for our community members is that, hey, listen, our local and state law enforcement are not cooperating. And so these are the list of stuff that agencies are prohibited from doing. My favorite is the last one, accepting or contracting with ICBP for language services. This used to be huge last time around, where local law enforcement would contact ICE for interpretation, ICE would come, and then ICE would arrest the individual. So that ended. Another thing that I want you to know is if Keep Washington Working is being violated by a certain agency in state or locally, then the remedy is a lawsuit. We recently sued the Adams County Sheriff's Office for violating the terms of Keep Washington Working. Thank you. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. This just says that the ICE or CBP agents cannot have civil immigration enforcement actions within the court or the vicinity of the court, unless there's like some certain exceptions with, and those generally are about safety. And court staff and prosecutors cannot be communicating people's immigration status with DHS. Thank you. Safety, I'm sorry, I realize that I'm all of a sudden going. Okay, safety planning. Oh, okay, thank you. So, as I think you all know, this is not our forte, NWIRP's forte, right? Just because this is about safety planning for your family, but what we really want you to pay attention to, if there is family, that you should engage in safety planning, is really important. And that the organization who has lots of resources on how to do when to do this, how to do this, is the Legal Counsel for Youth and Children. But very basically, all we are trying to establish here is that all our community members should be prepared for a nice arrest, right? And by prepared, I mean their financials, their family affairs, house, I don't know, all their accounts, medical, it should all be up to date. And all the documents, they should have copies of all the documents, children's birth certificates, passports, so forth and so on, in a safe place. They should have a person that they trust, that they inform about all of this, and then they should prepare either a third-party care of a child, which is a document that they can prepare, or have a durable power of attorney with someone that they trust. You can find much more information on this on Legal Counsel for Youth and Children's website. Thank you. Okay, another way that you can be active is by being an observer and bystander, by being an active observer and bystander, and record whenever there are enforcement actions happening, right? Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network has fantastic material. And it is a fantastic organization and a fantastic website that you all should really familiarize yourself with. But as we talked previously, this is what needs to happen so long as your recording does not aggravate the situation. All right. Resources. Okay, so LCYC, Legal Counsel for Youth and Children, as I mentioned, Legal Counsel for Youth and Children in Spanish, and then NWIRP, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, PIF Coalition for Health and Services and Access to Rights. And then these are mostly, the next three are how to find immigration help. And then these are memorandums that we discussed during the last two are memorandums that we discussed during the presentation. And again, National Homelessness Law Center, I know that you all know about this and are very familiar with it, but I found it an awesome website, and I suggest if you aren't, you really familiarize yourself with their website. And as I mentioned, if an agency does not have legal counsel, they suggest that you call or email. And then our advisory, as I mentioned during the presentation, and I believe that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a wealth of information that you have shared. I am actually going to turn it over to Hallie Willis, our community policy manager, who has been diligently tracking all your questions and your comments to kind of do a facilitated Q&A. So Hallie will read out the questions, and then we'll give Moshe an opportunity to respond to that. So Hallie, take it away.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Holly, for doing all this work. I just want to mention before we get into this that if I do not know the answer to a question, I'm going to jot it down, and then I will send an email to Holly and Jody later with the response. And I think that they can share it in their follow-up email. Thank you. I just wanted to say that. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Moshe, and thank you to everyone who's been asking questions as we've gone along. There've been a number of questions that sort of fall into similar categories, so I'll do my best to sort of roll them together in the time that we have. So there were a couple of questions about if you think that an ICE raid is happening in either you're in a public place, just out about your day, and you see something happening that looks like an ICE raid. What should you do? Should you call 911?
You can ask whether or not an ICE raid is happening, right? You can ask what's happening. I mean, the agents are not likely to answer you, but you can ask, and then you can record, right? I don't know if calling 911 is necessarily helpful, but you can ask whether or not the agents respond. And remember that the agents can be plain clothes, right? It doesn't, they are not always like fully geared, like, you know, they're going to World War III. They can be in plain clothes, and you can just announce that you're recording and then record.
And do you recommend that people report it to Weisson's hotline as well?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Absolutely and immediately.
Great. One other thing that we've heard on that from our friends at the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, or WISN, is they recommend sending as much information as you can gather about that to their hotline, but not going straight to social media. That can really sort of stir panic and bad information.
Yes. Thank you. Because we are not certain, right? Yet. Yes, I absolutely and positively agree with that.
Awesome. Thank you. There were also a number of questions about public and private areas and how people can designate private areas or what counts as a private area. So for example, if you have to meet certain requirements or pay a fee or unlock a door to get into an area, is that automatically private? Or should people post signs that say it's a private area? How should people go about making sure, especially when we're thinking about like homelessness services and people that are working in places like that, how should they decide what areas are public and private, and how should they mark those?
Awesome. So Danielle, thank you for that question, Hallie. Danielle, thank you for putting up a Weisson's thingy. This is really helpful, actually. And I cannot put enough of a plug for Weissen. They are an awesome organization. They are partner in many of our events. So how do you differentiate between, or demarcate, right, between public and private areas? Of course, if there is a lock on the door and if, you cannot easily enter, then, by definition, that's private. Because the general public cannot enter the space. Big picture, think of it this way. Can general public enter? Right? If general public can enter, then it's a public place. But if they cannot, then it's a private place, right? So we suggest that agencies do try to make as much of their offices into private areas. You can literally put signs up. I don't know, ask people to, there is a fine balance here, just because we also do not want the community to fear entering these spaces that are supposed to be really safe spaces, right? So it's a question of explaining why this is happening. It's not to collect information on the community member rather than keeping out, others that we do not necessarily want to enter. But anyway, yes, so put signs up that this area is a private area. If you can ask people to register, if you can somehow separate the areas. Do you know what I mean? I'm not suggesting necessarily a door, but and a curtain, like whatever. So people don't feel, agents don't feel free that this is a public area and I can just get in.
Awesome, thank you. There were some questions also about judicial warrants. There was a request to just clarify sort of how to identify a legitimate judicial warrant, like what are the elements that need to be in there? And also a question if anyone besides a court can issue a judicial warrant.
Okay, so first things first, I'm going to say this again. National Homelessness Law Center has a fantastic PowerPoint presentation on judicial warrants versus administrative warrants. So I really do suggest you guys to check out the website. Now, so judicial warrants are issued by a court. It has to be issued by a court. Right? It's judicial, it's by a judge. So it has to be issued by a court. Generally, it has the court's name, you know. So what court? Which court? It has the court's name. It should have the person or persons that the warrant is for. So just because you see the court's name and a judge, you know, like signature of a judge, and then whatever the date range is, right? And it's within that date range, generally 14 days. It's not enough. It has to have the name of the person that the officers are saying they're asking for. So 4 things, right? Which court? Is it signed by a judge? Who is going to be arrested? What's the time frame? It has to have these 4 for it to be valid. Again, go to National Homeless Law Center website.
Thank you so much. That's a great resource for folks. There were also a number of questions about various types of legal status and what different statuses are protected or not. And this might be too big of a question to really dive into in detail right now, but there were some questions about whether people who have visas to be international students are protected from deportation, or people who have work or sponsorship visas, if legal permanent residents are protected from deportation, and a few others as well.
All right. So the administration can put anyone in removal proceedings who is not a U.S. citizen, right? So they can put lawful permanent residents, Muhammad Khalil, remember? I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that the administration is suggesting that just because the Secretary of State believes that Mr. Khalil, who is a lawful permanent resident, by the way, may have adverse foreign policy consequences, that they can take that green card away. But remember, even Mr. Khalil can go before an immigration judge, right? So they cannot just take the green card away and deport them. Yeah. But so, sorry, backtracking. So everybody but a U.S. citizen can be deported. Lawful permanent residents, if they commit a crime or violate the terms of their status one way or another, can be subject to deportation, but they have a right to go to immigration court. I am sure we have all heard about people who are on student visas and valid visas, who are being, whose visas are being revoked, right? And the administration can do this because the administration alleges that they're supporting jihadists and terrorists and so forth and so on. Yes. So you could have status, and that status can be taken away from you. The administration is doing it. But that doesn't mean that people cannot fight and go to court. Sorry, that wasn't a very hopeful and uplifting answer.
But really, I mean, important for people to understand. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think we've got time for about one more question, and I see we've got a lot more questions rolling in as we've been going along. Thank you. We're going to do our best to jot down these questions and send out some answers in our follow-up email as well. But one last question about data security. So for organizations or staff that might hold data or information about clients and their immigration status, or anything related to that, what advice would you give people to make sure that data is secure and doesn't make its way to immigration officers if they don't have a valid warrant to have that data?
Okay. I wish I could show you my office right now. It used to be that I had files and folders like coming out of everywhere, right? All that changed. We do not leave any pieces of information with any client information anywhere to be found. I mean, that's just the most basic thing, right? Duh. That's like the most basic thing we can do is to make sure that I mean, client information is just not spread around by our printer, by our reception area. So, right? So that's one. The other, NWIRP actually has taken on updating our data security. Our IT team is like making sure that it's very hard to hack us, that like all our case management systems, right, are like protected, like with triple login, which is very annoying for staff, right? Nobody wants this, but we all understand why. So we all put up with it. So, I am sorry, I am not the best person to answer this question, but this is what I can think of. I will ask around and see if there's any more information that I can share that is more coherent.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Mojda. And there were a number of questions too, many of which are addressed by this massive packet of guidance that the National Homeless Law Center has put together for folks. So they've put together this great resource that includes like step-by-step instructions of like what to do before, after, and during an ICE raid, how to protect data, how to document a raid. They've got all of that put together really nicely in a packet, and we'll share that out after this webinar as well. If you're here in this webinar with us, but you did not register, please do register for this webinar. That's how we're gonna send out emails to folks after. So I will put that link in the chat, and please do register just so we have you all together with all of our attendees, and we can follow up with that information. And with that, I'll turn it over to Allison for a few words. Thank you.
Thanks, Hallie. Thank you, Mojda. I just want to acknowledge that even with this rich source of nuanced information, and I think everyone's understanding that we are living in a time when, as Mojda said, we could hang up from today's session and new things would happen that would change some of what has been shared today. We need to really sort of keep in mind this wonderful graphic from Wyzen to not panic, to seek out basic information and to recognize that there are dozens and dozens of different organizations represented on this call today. And many of your organizations already have protections in place for client confidentiality and privacy, for employee privacy and confidentiality, and will probably need to put additional protections in place. So please just recognize, if you're a decision maker in your organization, you're probably already in conversations about protecting privileged information and thinking twice before asking for certain kinds of information. And we know that there will be demands made on organizations that receive federal funds. If you are not in a decision-making position in your organization, you can ask questions of your supervisors and leaders and the folks who make decisions. Please just understand things are in flux at every level. We do not have somebody here from the local government entities that fund many of our member organizations, the KCRHA, King County, the City of Seattle, but we know, because we have been asking them, that they are examining issues like privacy, confidentiality, and responding to requests or demands for information. These are the conversations that we will be spending time having within our communities, within our organizations, and there will be very difficult decisions being made. What I think we want to just be clear about is we will continue to seek accountability and the best current information from multiple sources. This session today, which we still have another very important piece of to come, is just one part. We have previously invited legal counsel for youth and children to come and talk about safety planning. I think we will probably repeat those things. So feel welcome, in addition to your questions, to say what would be useful for you and your colleagues and the people you work with and serve. And we will do our best either to host or co-host or find other resources for you. One of the things that is really important is to understand what is happening in the moment. These are extremely scary and stressful situations. And Jody and then John Grant from the Low Income Housing Institute are going to speak about one recent experience and some of the lessons learned through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, so we are going to go ahead and close the recording out at this time. If we could please stop the recording.